All right, let's talk about success. What if I told you that the secret to achieving great things isn't really about being tough in the way we usually think? Today, we're going to dig into that idea and challenge a pretty popular and maybe even harmful myth about what it actually takes to win.
So this whole thing kicked off with a really interesting question I saw on an online forum. Basically, it asked, are the most successful people also the most physically fit? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answers, well, they tell you a whole lot about how we look at high achievers.
And wow, the debate was all over the place. You had some people saying, absolutely, it's a sign of discipline. But then others jumped in, pointing out the classic correlation versus causation trap. Maybe being successful just gives you the money and time to be fit. This back and forth is the perfect jumping off point for what we're talking about today.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with that idea of fitness as a success signal. Then we're going to tackle the whole myth of mental toughness. After that, we'll look at the real cost of that old school thinking, and I'll introduce you to a much better psychological toolkit. We'll even touch on how leadership fits in, and finally, we'll wrap it all up to help you think about your own definition of success. Okay, first up, the success signal. Let's really get into why we automatically connect being in shape with being a high achiever. What's going on in our brains when we make that link? When you boil that whole online discussion down, it comes to this. We see physical fitness as a kind of shorthand for success. It screams discipline, work ethic, confidence. And then there's the halo effect, which is totally real. Where we see one positive trait and just assume someone has a bunch of other good ones too. And of course, there are the real deal benefits, like having more energy and handling stress better. It's just an easy connection for our brains to make. And all of this leads us right to the big idea that physical fitness is supposed to prove. Mental toughness. I mean, for decades, this has been the ultimate goal in sports, in business, everywhere. But is it really the key? Or is it a myth that might actually be doing more harm than good? Now, look, the official definition sounds pretty great. A psychological edge, staying focused under pressure. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? The problem isn't the goal itself. It's the often brutal and counterproductive ways we've been taught to get there. And this is where it all comes to a head. On one side, you've got that old school toughness culture. You know the one, just suck it up, suppress the pain, never quit, and whatever you do, don't show weakness. It's that whole break them down to build them up idea. But the much more effective, resilient approach is completely different. It's about growing from stress, becoming more self-aware, and making it okay to ask for help. It's a total paradigm shift. Yeah, and that old school mentality, it comes with a pretty hefty price tag. That whole break them down idea, whether it's on a sports field or in an office boardroom, has some serious and often invisible consequences. I mean, just think about it. We've all seen or heard about these kinds of coaches or bosses, the ones who yell, who humiliate people, who have a win-at-all-costs attitude and push people to work through injuries. This stuff isn't building character. It's just controlling and, frankly, psychologically damaging. And this image really captures what that pressure feels like. It's crushing. This relentless drive to appear tough is what leads people to hide injuries, sacrifice their mental health, and just completely burn out. It's a silent struggle that can have some really devastating results. And that kind of pressure just extinguishes the very passion that got you started. I mean, this quote from an athlete says it all. The love is gone. It's been replaced by this heavy, soul-crushing obligation. It also creates this awful, crippling fear of failure. When every little mistake is jumped on and criticized, you don't get better performance. You get paralysis. People become terrified to take the creative risks that are absolutely essential for growth. And finally, this all-or-nothing approach can completely fuse a person's identity to their performance. Your whole sense of self gets wrapped up in your achievements. So what happens if you fail? Or when it's time to retire? It's just a recipe for a massive identity crisis. Okay, so enough about the problem. Let's shift gears and talk about the solution. If that old model is broken, what do we replace it with? Well, the answer is a whole new psychological toolkit, one that's all about building genuine resilience and a much healthier mindset for success that can actually last. And this right here is a super important distinction. We're not talking about self-control, which is kind of like trying to hold a lid on a boiling pot of water. We're talking about self-regulation, which is learning how to actually turn down the heat. One is about suppression, the other is a real skill based on understanding and managing your emotions. So how do you actually build this skill? Well, it starts with the voice inside your head.
Instead of thinking, I'm going to fail, you reframe it. I'm prepared and I can handle this. You can use things like visualization to build confidence, mindfulness to stay in the moment, and self-awareness to just know what's going on inside. And maybe most importantly, you practice self-compassion. You learn to be kind to yourself. These are all trainable skills.
And really, the foundation for this entire toolkit is what's known as a growth mindset. It's the core belief that your abilities aren't set in stone. When you truly believe that you can improve with effort and that failures aren't the end of the world but actually learning opportunities, that's when you unlock the power to use all these other tools. But here's the thing. An individual's mindset can only take them so far. The environment you're in is absolutely huge. So let's look at how leadership can either build one of those destructive toughness cultures or instead an environment where people can actually thrive. And the difference is just night and day. Autocratic leadership, top down, my way or the highway, that's the perfect breeding ground for that toxic toughness culture. It creates fear and tanks morale. But a democratic style, where people feel heard and have a say, that builds trust, psychological safety, and true resilience. And guess what? It also leads to higher productivity and better results. So let's pull all these threads together. After everything we've talked about, what does this mean for you and for your own definition of success?
So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Success is not some final destination you arrive at. It's a journey of constant progress. And that journey is fueled by resilience, not by just gritting your teeth and being tough. It's powered by a growth mindset and by real, trainable skills like self-regulation. And it's all happening in an environment that either helps you or hurts you.
As we've seen, a lot of our ideas about what it takes to succeed are based on these old, outdated myths. So I'll leave you with a question to really think about. What's one myth about success that you, personally, need to unlearn to move forward?
Thank you for watching. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe and share it.